TOA community, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Robert Linkul, trainingtheolderadult.com, here to talk to you today about some of the basic movement patterns that we perform in the gym. And one of the ones that I've noticed that is performed often is the single arm row. We call it a 3-point row. And what we see a lot, in my opinion, is probably not the most ideal way to do it. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background on why one specific way is probably not ideal, why another version is probably a little bit more efficient. I'm not a huge fan of saying this is wrong and this is right, but I think when you look at the anatomical breakdowns on these, you'll see like, okay, this makes sense to probably do them this way. So this article here from Men's Health gave a little bit of an in-depth look into stopping the process of putting one knee on the bench while you perform the row and why. Now, they go into some in-depth here about how putting one knee on the bench and one hand on the bench doesn't allow your rhomboid and your lat to get the ideal big stretch. And all of that might be accurate. I didn't really agree with it, but the one position in this that I don't like is the hip alignment when you're on the bench. And you can see it even in this photo of this guy up here. His hip is kinked and turned out because his floor leg is either not in the right position to stabilize him enough to keep him square to be able to perform the row well, or he's got to slide his leg way back to make his hips level, putting him in a rather unstable position to perform the row. So I do think that they've got something here with the angle of stretch and maximal range of motion, and I think that's probably all accurate, and I wanted to show you all that, okay? But what I really got out of this, in my opinion, what I got out of this is the 3-point position from a standing versus the one knee or the half kneeling position. ISSA also took a look into the row and gave some alternatives. You know, they talk about what the basic single arm row is, how it can be performed with some of the more common mistakes. And again, same as we're going to talk about and I'm going to demo here. You could use a barbell, you could do the dumbbell, bent row, single arm double. You can do a chest supported dumbbell row, which Sornex is the only one that I know of right now that makes a attachment that would hook on the rack. And it's like a little L bracket, that kind of comes up and out. And then there's a pad here that you can lay your chest on, and you could do a chest supported row. The NSCA calls it something different. It's like a prone bench row or something like that, they call it, where you would lay flat on a bench. And typically there's a bar that's got a curve in it that you would grab from the floor and row, a big range of motion prone on the bench. I am not a fan of doing anything prone on benches, especially with aging populations, because the pressure of laying on your rib cage on a hard bench like that, just the pressure of your own body weight can either break or crack ribs and or stress the tendons in between. And from rib to rib, it's called costochondritis is the word I was looking for. And basically it's the tearing or the aggravation of the tendon from bone to bone. And it's more of a cartilage than it is a tendon, but that cartilage in between there can get shifted and it'll actually kind of break, just like cartilage in your nose. If you punched it or pushed it hard enough, it would kind of snap to the one side, and it's super painful. Basically, the only way to heal it is to be patient and to wait and to try not to aggravate it, which every time you take a big breath, your rib cage expands. So I'm not a huge fan of laying prone and doing any kind of fly or row or anything, but the idea of having a sternum pad, it's like a 8 by 10 inch or 12 by 12 or something like that, where it's basically just your sternum that you would put on there. Well, now you're on your sternum, your manubrium. These are big bony surfaces onto a really nice pad, and it doesn't touch your ribs anywhere. That's a great idea. I really like that one. So that would be my number one. That would be my go-to. On occasion, we'll take a towel, roll it up, put it against our forehead, and push it against the rack or the wall, and use that as a head brace support for our hinged row if you don't want to leave your back exposed. And then you have a stability ball dumbbell row. Don't do anything on the stability row. Remember, number one, Anytime you create instability on your body, you're creating less opportunity to row and move more load with good control in a big full range of motion. So do I want to work on stability, or do I want to work on my rowing strength and trying to rip in a good way, these fibers to get the hypertrophy based effect that I'm looking for? Or do I want to work on balance and stabilization? Do one or the other. Don't do both. You can't really optimize either one, in my opinion, by doing something like that. And what you're doing is you're taking a ball or a Bosu and a half moon, kind of dish ball, and you're going to stand or kneel or whatever you're going to do on it. And that's got all your body weight plus the weight of the implement that you're rowing. The potential, if it pops or breaks and you to fall and smash or get damaged, way too much risk for reward and way too much instability to actually produce anything. So I would rather you just do your rows and then go do stability work if that's what the intention is. And then the croc row, the dumbbell row done with high reps and heavy weights, is referred to as a croc row. That makes this dumbbell row variation a good option for clients who are power lifters. Never heard of that one. So there we've learned a new one together. But let's go back here and take a look. I'm gonna just remove this guy entirely. And I wanna show you just a couple of positions. So if you were to look at my hip alignment while I set up for this, okay? When I get into this kneeling or single knee bench position, the only way for me to keep my hips level is for me to bend my knee to try to establish a balanced position, a level position. And again, I'm just kind of guessing that this is level. If I straighten both my legs, okay, you can see from here, even at the odd angle that you guys are on, you can see I'm not straight, okay? Not even close. Like I should be there if my hips are straight, okay? So for me to kneel onto my, get down onto one knee and then hinge into position, my hips are basically kinked and tilted to one side. Now that kink does two things. It puts me out of alignment for stability, but it also, where your lats originate along the iliac crest of your hip, all the way up, it also puts your hips and now all the musculature ascending off of it, puts all of those in weird angles or odd angles. And I think that's what this article, that first one, was referring to, is you're not maximizing your greatest stretch and range naturally, especially the posterior kinetic chain connection. If I were to stand on both feet, which is what I'm going to recommend to you, and then hinge over, now I'm preloading my Achilles, my soleus, my gastroc. All of those are going to overlap each other over my knees, get into all my hamstrings. My hamstrings are going to overlap into my glutes. My glutes are going to overlap up into my erectors and my lats. My lats are going to overlap up into my serratus, all the way up into the armpit here, and my rhomboids. So basically the whole posterior chain is going to be taut and on and tight. And now I've got that evenly balanced, evenly stabilized kinetic chain and pull of one musculature overlapping, and they're all stretched now around me. So now I'm really optimizing how good of a stretch and how good of a pull and how strong of a stretch and a pull I can get. Where if I'm on a knee, my right hamstring is on slack, my right gastroc is on slack, my glute is on slack. Now my hips are kinked and kind of turned, so my left lat is going to get a rotational stretch to it at the bottom. My right lat is on slack and isn't very active at all, okay? So all these alignment issues really can kind of wreak more havoc than they can put you into an optimal position. And on second, to kind of take all of that to a second level is, unless this is the perfect height for you. So let's say, okay, I'm 6'4", standing here next to this, okay? I'm 6'4". That's at 4 inches below my knee. So you're gonna need to be 5'6". If you're not 5'6" or 5'7", as soon as you put your knee on here, you're gonna be at an awkward angle. You're either gonna be kinked low like I am, or you're gonna be over kinked high if you're shorter than 5'5", let's say. So we're gonna give you a 2 to 3 inch range, 5'5" to 5'7", somewhere in there, where this might be a straight balanced position for you. But even then, is this an 18-inch bench? Is this a 16-inch bench? Is it a 20-inch high bench? All of those everything I just told you could all be different now, right? But with all of the things, all the heights, 20, 16, 18, all of them, they can be fixed if I just face the bench, stand on my own 2 feet, hinge over, and either place my fist, my hand, or my forearm on the bench, depending on its height. Now I'm going to get a really good pre-stretch, and then the floor arm, or the bench arm in this case, if we were doing like a 6-point row or a 4-point row on the floor, we would look at this more as a 6 or a 4-point row position, floor-based, okay? Let me get a little bit more centered. So this floor arm or bench arm, the key to this arm is, number one, to keep it straight, but not allow hyperextension at my elbow. So I have a wrist injury. That's why I go on my knuckles. I make a nice tight fist. My thumb is on the outside, never on the inside, and really not on the top is ideal. Wrap it around your thumbs. Push your hand straight down, and then actively push like I'm trying to punch through the bench. That'll keep my forearm on. My bicep and my tricep are both active because I'm isometrically engaging here on the bench, okay? So now that I'm pushing down and I'm actively pushing down, what happens to all the musculature on the upper posterior side of right side of my body? My serratus, my rhomboids, my lats, my pecs, my biceps, my triceps, my delts, my traps, everything, levator scapula, everything is on to stabilize that arm while I row the other side. Where if I'm in a kneeling position, I can almost passively just let my hands sit here while I'm rowing, okay? And not that you can't cheat and do that in this position as well, but you're more prone, I guess I would say, prone, get it? You're more prone to load this hand when you don't have a secondary stabilizer on the bench. So I think that's of benefit. Both feet even, good hinge position, load up that posterior chain, push down as I pull up. And we will cue that as I'm holding on to a telephone book and I'm going to rip it in half, right? I'm going to rip that telephone book in half every time. So the floor arm or the bench arm is going to punch through while I'm pulling back with the other. Both arms are active even though my right's not going to move. So I'm going to load up, I'm going to brace, and then when I grab my dumbbell or kettlebell here, whatever implement I'm going to row, my first initial movement from here, I want to move my rhomboid and my trap up and in, up and in. Okay, I want to get that posterior chain to activate right between the shoulder blades. Then I'm going to pull my elbow, and then to finish, I'm going to row my thumb to my chest and then return it back down. So you're going to think rhomboid, lat, bicep, okay? Rhomboid, lat, bicep. And even though the rhomboid is on the whole time, the lat is on the whole time, and your bicep is on the whole time, it's a way of thinking about the musculature. Which one do you want to activate at which frame, and how are you going to stack them as you row up into that high, let's call it the accordioned position, and then allow it to stretch back out, and then accordion in and stretch back out. Now, I've seen people that will take rotation and try to get this bigger, deeper stretch. If you are rotating, you're still turning your pelvis, you're rotating your thoracic spine. Are you getting a greater stretch than if you just stay square and allow your arm to fully extend, okay? I think where you would get a greater stretch is if you allow your arm to go forward, but not so much in a twist. That's why I kind of stand at this angle. So when I'm in this position, I can have the implement straight down, but I can also allow the implement to come forward and create a bigger stretch through my lat, row it up and back, let it come forward, up and back. Now I can get a greater lat stretch, rhomboid stretch every time the implement comes down, but I'm not having to rotate or twist my thoracic spine and allow a potential injury to occur through thoracic rotation under load. With lower back, with hip, with even knee or shoulder or rib injuries, all of those are greater risk injuries that I don't really need to take, okay? So when we continue to kind of look at the idea of something as simple as a single arm row, you think just throw a knee and a hand on the bench and just row away. Well, it's not so simple. This is where the simplicities of the basic fundamental lifts done really, really well have great returns. But the key phrase in all of that is when done really, really well. So if we can break these mechanics down and really focus on exactly what are we trying to maximize, what ranges are we trying to perfect, what angles and what positions should we be in to be as safe but as effective as we can. When it comes to the single arm row, or 3-point row as we call it in-house, you should have 3 points of contact, both of your feet and one hand and or your elbow, if you're in a higher box that you can place your elbow on. And allow that dumbbell to either come straight down or to drift out in front to create a greater lat, rhomboid, serratus, posterior delt stretch. As you complete that rhomboid triggered, lat triggered, bicep triggered, accordion style row, and maximizing every range and every rep that you produce. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to comment down below. And if not, continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.